Warning, I'll be discussing the plot and revealing a lot. Spoilers ahead. Reading can take you places you've never been before. In the Commonwealth, it's taken you straight to limbo. Literacy is a crime there. Being a child without a home is a crime. Complaining about how someone was treated, also a crime. Crime is everywhere. Criminals, like yourself, are sent to the downside. A place with a lot of downsides. It's not somewhere good to be, though it is possible to adjust. There's only one hope of escape, of returning home. An ancient game. P-Ball. Teams of 3 fight each other for the right to send a single member back home. The chosen one then steps into a reverse waterfall, is returned to the Commonwealth, and then showered in fame and riches as they return in glory, because they won the because they passed the ancient rites.
Everyone will be here to celebrate you, my victors.
Man, dystopias and their death games, am I right? In the downside, where you now reside, there's little food, little safety, but it used to be worse. A group called the 8 Scribes tamed the place into being somewhat livable. These scribes also set up P-Ball, which allows for someone to go free once in a while, but only at the expense of others. Because their goal with this game wasn't just to give people hope, freedom, or good stuff, it was also to teach people their own special brand of enlightenment. As part of enlightenment, the scribes believed that an adversary was necessary for self-improvement. The Nightwings, your team, are the symbol for this. The Nightwings are supposed to represent all of the races, and must always participate in the games. If they don't, then nobody plays. In other words, the central idea is basically, hey, human, harpy, whatever you are, see this person who looks like your species all hidden under those robes, but the right body shape? Shh, don't talk to them. Pretend that the person's you. Prove your worth by fighting others and then, finally, defeating yourself, your own shadow. Symbolism. But in the end, it all essentially winds up being very reminiscent of other dystopian stories. The winner is the person who has worth. The loser is a loser. Playing P-Ball. P-Ball is what Pyre's centered around. It's actually called the Ancient Rites, but it's basically basketball with fire and preaching. Only instead of a basket, you have a pyre. That's why I'm calling it P-Ball instead of B-Ball. If the orb goes into the opposing team's pyre, then their fire gets weaker. The first team to extinguish the other's flame wins. Players can dunk or do a free throw. They can also cast their auras at people, which knock opponents out of the game for a little bit if they connect. It's sort of like allowing magical fouls. Knock into someone to make them go away. Then stroll to the goal. You have to do 23 matches in Pyre, but you can do more than that if you want extra stuff. It takes 11 hours to beat the main game, but for completionists, it'll take about 19 hours. So Pyre's not too long. Despite this shortness, after several matches, it began to feel repetitive to me. At points, it was also annoying.
Final chance at liberation.
So the gameplay had its flaws. That was just one. Meanwhile, unlike B-Ball, P-Ball was a weirdly religious game. The big thing was that players gained enlightenment by playing. It was like experience points, but rebranded. Only those who grasped the scribe's teachings, who earned enough enlightenment points, had a chance for freedom through religion. You had to be at least a level 4 initiate to ascend to a higher place, and the max level was 5. Meanwhile, the flame was supposed to be purifying everyone. They could gain bonuses through a pray-to-play system. There was more, too. But the important thing to remember is that the scribes, the makers of P-Ball, were using this game as a sort of moral training because the makers of P-Ball. The scribes gave those in the downside a very narrow, dangerous path to freedom, with screwed-up caveats, such as deciding that only one person could go free at a time. Their Book of Rights even noted that this limitation was their choice, not a necessity. And these scribes also seemed to still be around, watching and granting or denying favor whenever they chose to. It would have been one thing if horrible people were learning to become better through enlightenment, but that's not how Pyre worked. The cast of characters, the exiles, were mostly good, being treated malevolently, and that was called enlightenment. Sadistic choices were the norm, too. Who do you let free? The innocent, bullied orphan? The small creature who only wants to help others? The kind man who hates killing? Pick one. Why? Because the scribes say not everyone's worthy of redemption for their sins, so pick. You must. Which was not a good look for the scribes who were forcing these choices. They didn't seem as peaceful and well-meaning as the plot and story of Pyre implied. Plus, their enlightenment was hollow. It was praised, the story revolved around it in a positive way, all of the exiles needed it to ascend, but enlightenment is supposed to mean that you no longer feel lost, that you have truth, understanding. In Pyre, enlightenment didn't help anybody who wasn't already good to begin with. Some people who were good actually became worse, like Orlek and Brighton. So the scribes didn't seem to be a good guiding force for people. It was just that the writing in the game heavily pushed the narrative that the scribes were good beings. It was a tell, don't show kind of thing. Meanwhile, as the praise poured on, the questionable aspects about the scribes weren't even addressed. For instance, for mystical beings with powers, they seemed oddly content with how corrupted things were. Why didn't they intervene? Because they seemed able to intervene whenever they wanted to. They didn't just bless people when they were prayed to. They also destroyed their own ancient game, the only chance of freedom for exiles, over a petty reason. It was over one exiled man throwing a tantrum and making a duplicate Nightwings team out of spite. The end of P-Ball was definitely due to the scribes, too. It's not explicitly stated, but it was implied. It wasn't due to the Commonwealth. The leader of the Commonwealth guessed that it would happen, but he didn't know. He was shocked when the freedom to leave was actually revoked from the exiles, and he had no idea who did it.
And thus the scribes have chosen. And thus the scribes have chosen. And thus the scribes have chosen. No. Nightwings. Reader, what have you done?
Evil actions kept happening too. The game even ended with one last sadistic final test from the scribes. It was a big and cruel intervention. They wanted to keep the exit open just long enough to force one more awful choice. Keep in mind, this is an evil villain trope, and the scribes are supposed to be good people. It was a sadistic choice no matter who won the match beforehand, too. If you won, do you free yourself, free the team member that you already selected, who's eagerly waiting to go and watching hopefully, by the way, or do you free Orlek? And, spoiler, if you don't free the mentally unstable person, Orlek, then he completely loses his mind and commits suicide out of utter despair. He really can't handle the final test. But it's a weird, sad ending for him if you win the last match no matter what. Even if you free him, even if his former friends are waiting to reconcile with him, then he's still not doing well. He keeps to himself, but still thinks often of you, the person who sacrificed their own freedom to save him. It seems as if he's depressed about his past actions, yet he doesn't contact you, even though messages can be sent to the downside, and he's wondering how you're doing. By the way, it seemed as if the scribes wanted Orlek to suffer, because in context, the scribes paused everything to make that big, tense choice happen, and to force this decision on you. It seemed as if the scribes were manipulating Orlek forward and saying, "Are you sure?" The Bard confirmed this too, by calling it the scribes' final test. Was it a climactic moment for the narrative? I guess so, but it was also a mean move. Again, these were supposed to be merciful and good scribes. On the flip side, if Orlek won, then things were still pretty dark for him. Does he leave, only to question his choice later, once he regains his sanity? Get manipulated by the player into choosing to give up his freedom, and then commit suicide once his mind clears? Or does he decide to die in the downside, choosing to give you your freedom instead? By the way, the no contact order between you and Orlek stays in force even if you're the one who's freed. You can't write Oralek, just like how he couldn't write you if he left. But oddly, Oralek can get letters, just not from you. Volfred can write them. Oralek can write back. It's just that you can't write anybody, not even the others who stayed. Why? Because? So many plot holes. There were many oddities like this in the story. For instance, Volfred could telepathically reach you in the downside, even when he was in the Commonwealth. You have telepathy powers too, but you can't use them to contact anybody you left behind, or, if you stay, to contact those who left. And that telepathy issue is worth a side note because it could have easily solved everything, but it wasn't used because drama. This was because, at the end of the game, if you talk to Oralek telepathically and explain things to him, then that's why he'll choose your freedom over his own. This made being unable to reason with him before more strange, not less, because it showed that a simple conversation would have solved everything quickly, because the telepath's feelings could be genuinely understood. Both you and his past buddy, Volfred, should have been able to talk with Oralek at any time in his head. Instead, he wreaked havoc on the downside. Lastly, I'll mention one more thing. One more part of the plot that was a big what? Oralek had earned his freedom already. That's actually what drove him mad. He was basically let out of prison. Someone else tossed him back in as he exited, and then she got killed by security when running out the door. So after that, Oralek's supposed to wander around the prison forever? Even though he got the clearance to leave? Or else either a second reader has to re-clear him at the expense of other prisoners, or he has to declare himself the most important person if he wins, even over the other teammates that were willing to fight for him and cared for him. How is this enlightenment? His treatment doesn't make any sense, unless the scribes were incredibly evil and enjoyed twisted mind games. Yet, remember, the story didn't recognize that. The only person who deeply criticized the scribes was Oralek when he felt insane. Everybody else... The characters. As for the rest of the characters, they were interesting, but they were mostly quiet. I didn't feel like I really got to know them well. This also didn't make sense in the context of the game, because the PC spends a great deal of time traveling with them in close quarters. For instance, who to set free was supposed to be a hard, emotional choice. Instead, I struggled with who to free due to not knowing them well enough. A few characters obviously wanted to go home, but as for the others, well, does the Worm Knight really care where he is? The Commonwealth or the downside? As long as there are others he can act honorably toward and possibly save? Does Pamitha want to go free, if she'll always remember that her sister is not free while she is, and is stuck in the downside without her? What about the young girl? She likes feeling close to the scribes in the downside, and seems convinced that the inanimate wagon is her brother. Would she be happier in the downside than in the Commonwealth? Or would she want to go back to where life is easier, yet where she used to be bullied, while also losing what she's deeply attached to here by going? You can't ask them about this stuff. You have to make guesses, even though you're making a decision that will impact them for the rest of their lives. This bothered me because I wanted to like these NPCs. I wanted to get to know them better. Their voice acting was made up of gibberish, but they were voiced well. The actors' emotive tones really added to the presence of the characters. The artwork for them was also well done and made them seem endearing. However, there was little dialogue to be had, because the players' interactions with them were brief. There was definitely a sense of wanting more as far as the characters were concerned. Final thoughts. On top of the other problems, it's important to note that the player could choose to rebel against the Commonwealth, but there was no way to address the unfair system of redemption that the scribes supported. There was no way to express disapproval towards them, no way to address the Pyre situation in Pyre. Instead, the plot's core idea was that the scribes were good and godlike in their harmony. But it was the Commonwealth Society's corruption that was the only problem, and so society needed to be made anew. That bothered me, because it wasn't just the system above that was rotten. The scribes seemed pretty rotten too. After all, even the leader got his start due to the scribes' system. And that was a big issue, because there was no satisfying conclusion. There was no widespread criticism of the scribes, no rescue attempt that could be made for those still in exile, nothing. It was just, okay, everybody who's not out is trapped now, due to the scribes, praise the scribes. The game had its good points. The NPCs were underutilized, but they were still endearing. The character art was nice, the backgrounds were vibrant and really stood out. The music was good in the game, but some tracks were so good that I also like to listen to them outside of the game. For example, there's Will of the Scribes, which I think is rather good, and I'll link to it in the description. Overall though, I wasn't a fan of Pyre itself. I thought that it was a pretty game in both its sights and sounds. But the gameplay wasn't fun for me, and the story felt wobbly at best.